This is Tucker Carlson tonight. Tucker, you can have guns, but faithful servants of the Democratic Party can. So, sorry, you can't have guns, but faithful servants of the Democratic Party can. So, this is going to be. Now, remember, this happened before the shooting, right? This happened before this latest shooting in Nashville that was perpetrated by a trans man, right? So, one can only imagine what Tucker Carlson is how he's going to bend that shit around. Right? So, just, I don't know, maybe we'll have to revisit it after he comes back and comments on the Nashville shooter. But this was his opinion before the Nashville shooter. So let's see what Tucker Carlson has to say about trans people owning guns. Here we go.
If there's one thing your average liberal understands perfectly well, it's that there's safety in numbers. Don't go out alone. Bring 80 million people with you. It's safer that way. There is a reason, a fundamental reason, the Democrats are natural joiners and organizers and petition signers, and that their highest virtue is conformity. They know that as long as they're all wearing the same uniform, they'll probably be okay.
Okay, yeah. Because, there's no such thing as individuals on the left wing, right? Everyone on the left wing completely conforms. So, this is a logical fallacy, by the way. It's a fallacy called Jonanism, right? Which is sort of a take on onanism. It's the assumption that everyone who's your enemy is exactly the same. That every single person that opposes you thinks the exact same thing, right? That every single person who doesn't agree with you has the exact same motives, right? And the exact same lived experience and believes in the exact same thing. And it's just simply not true at all, What he's doing here is actually like a very sort of very, very common kind of right-wing smear against people on the left, saying that they're all like, everyone on the left is like some kind of fucking ridiculous hive mind, right? That they're all sort of commie, like, I guess commie, like conformist, right? Like brainwashed communist sheep. It's a thing you hear on the right, and on the right wing, it's like, the right wing is full of rugged individuals who are, make decisions for themselves and are capable of thinking for themselves, and it's just really funny how in real life it just is not like that at all. Like, one thing you notice in real life is that when it comes to the pundits and the politicians on the right wing, they are always kind of 100% in lockstep all the time, right? Not so much the individuals. Individual people always have different opinions no matter what, right? But when it comes to the punditry class, especially when it comes to the Republican punditry, right? Tucker Carlson, Sean Hannity, Laura Ingraham, Tim Pool, right? All of those people, every single one of them they don't rock the boat, right? They don't have their own opinions on anything, like, ever. One thing the Republicans are really, really good at is messaging, right? They kind of come to a consensus and they stick with it no matter what. And this is why you hear political pundits repeating themselves. It seems like they repeat themselves. Like, you can turn on Tucker Carlson, or you can turn on Sean Hannity, you can turn on Laura Ingraham, you can turn on, any given number of right-wing streamers and sort of influencers, and hear the exact same opinion over and over and over. And if anything, they try to outdo themselves on how far they can push it right. How outlandish they can get. The most, how they try to outdo themselves in sort of how shocking and outlandish and how ridiculous their opinions can be. because this is how these people make money, right? And it's very rare that you see someone on the right wing, when it comes to a politician or a pundit, have an opinion that doesn't sort of toe the company line. Very rare, you know. Usually when that happens, those people lose favor. I can think of an example, Tommy Lauren. Remember Tommy Lauren? Sort of, fucking conformist, conservative Barbie, right? She was on the Blaze for a little while. Um, few years back, she actually came out being pro-choice when it comes to abortion, right? She was kind of a rising star on the conservative right, and came out as pro-choice, and suddenly she disappeared. Suddenly that really hampered her career. Just saying that one thing really, really hampered her career, right? Because she broke with the conservative hive mind. And I'm not saying that this doesn't happen on the left as well. Of course it does, right? Of course it does. But it's been my experience that, especially when it comes to left-wing pundits and things like that, you get a much more varied range of opinions, right? One thing that you do find on the left, though, is that people will massacre you for saying the same thing, and it's not that you won't you won't like lose a job or any shit like that, right? It's not like that. It's not like a pundit gets fired if they say the wrong thing, right? But people will try to cancel you, and sometimes it's for, like, you're seeing this right now. An example of this on the left is Anna Kasparian. She had kind of some really bad takes about trans women, stuff like that, on Twitter. And the thing is that so there's a lot of infighting. People are basically trying to cancel her now, and there's a lot of infighting on the left. So I'm not saying that the shit doesn't happen in left wing circles as well, the left wing pundits and all that stuff, right? But what you don't see on the left is people basically repeating the exact same opinions over and over and over. Seemingly to me, it seems like you get a lot more nuance when it comes from the left. And on the right wing, it's a lot more sort of like bumper sticker axioms, right? And the exact same criticisms and the exact same opinions, and they'll all defend Donald Trump, and they'll all, shit like that. Anyway, let's continue here.
This is why you'll see one person in Brookline or Bethesda raise a Ukrainian flag in the yard, and the very next day, everybody on the street will have one too. Suddenly, it's an entire neighborhood of foreign policy experts all specializing in Eastern European border disputes. It's amazing. Just last year, these very same people were all eminent virologists, every one of them with passionate views on the details of pandemic management.
Yeah, I don't know why it became such a big fucking deal, first off, to like suck Russia's dick all of a sudden when you're a right winger. It really blows me away that, that the conservatives are such fucking Russia simps, you know. And I like how he threw that in there. So, you're all foreign policy experts. It's like, well, why? Because we're not siding with the aggressors in a war. We're not siding with a fascist aggressor who invaded a sovereign country. I guess that makes us all that makes us all sheeple, right? I also like how he had to throw in some fucking anti-vax stuff going on in there, because it makes us all sheeple, I guess, because we like to take basic precautions during a pandemic and actually trust scientists and take vaccinations, and instead of risking our fucking lives every time we go to the convenience store, right? I like how that happens. Like, that's the other thing that I really don't. I mean, I just really can't understand why anybody on the right wing thought politicizing vaccines was a good idea. Yeah, you guys know that the fact that more conservatives died over the last few years was a contributing factor to Donald Trump losing the election. You know that actually is true. That it a significant, here's the thing, right? So in 3 of the battleground states in 2020, right? There's like Georgia, Pennsylvania, and like Arizona. Those 3 states. I think it's those 3 states. Biden basically took those states by less than 40,000 votes combined, right? Which is the, within the range of the number of people who died of COVID in those states combined. So, conceivably, if there was no pandemic, Donald Trump may have been reelected, right? Because people who don't get vaccinated die at a rate of 4 to 1 to people who get vaccinated. Conservatives have politicized vaccines and are not getting vaccinated at the same rate as, Democrats and liberals and progressives, right? So even though roughly 70% of the country has taken at least one vaccine by now, right? The pandemic is still going on, and you're still seeing roughly 300 people a day dying from the Rona. And it's not hard to find, it's not hard to see that, those people who are biting the big one, what their political affiliation is, right? This is just the facts. So you want to win elections, you're going to have to start getting vaccinated there, conservatives, right? I mean, I think you should do whatever you want. I think it's a free country. And if you're too fucking dumb to get vaccinated, that's your problem. That's what I think. I'm kind of given up on like the encouraging people to vaccinate part. I've given up on that shit. And I think now you have the choice. Now I think it's sort of like wearing a seatbelt. You know what I mean? You have the choice. Enough information is out there now that you can make an informed decision. And if you are too fucking dumb to make the right decision, then you get to suffer the consequences. The same way that if you are too stupid to wear a seatbelt, when you inevitably crash your car, you're going to suffer the consequences. That's what I think. I think people need to take personal responsibility, for everything in their lives, including preventing themselves from dying from an easily transmittable, an easily preventable disease like COVID. So, moving on, but Tucker Carlson, of course, says that because it riles his base up, gets people angry, and thus he makes more money. Let's move on a little bit here. Play, you piece of shit.
Go out alone. Bring 80 million people with you. It's safer that way. European border disputes.
Shut up, asshole. Continue.
It's amazing. Just last year, these very same people were all eminent virologists, every one of them with passionate views on the details of pandemic management. This is, in other words, not a movement of rugged individuals. This is a party based on the idea of the group.
What did I say? Rugged individuals. What did I just say? I knew he was going to say that. See, I haven't watched this. I've watched pieces of this, but I haven't watched the whole thing through it. I genuinely didn't know that he was going to say rugged individuals there, but it's because you hear the same fucking arguments from these people over and over and over again. That's why. They're conservatives have nothing new. No new shit on the shelf. They've got no new, ideas. Continuing.
Bureaucracy, the blob. It's the party of weak, fearful people who are huddled together for collective power. When the Democratic Party speaks, it is always with one voice, often in a North Korean accent. One thing the party...
Often in a North Korean accent? The fuck are you talking about? Often in a North Korean accent? Since when is North Korea supposedly so, influential to the Democratic Party? To liberals or progressives or the Democrats? That's the dumbest shit I've heard in my entire life. North Korea has zero influence on American politics. I mean, if anything, if you want to make that argument, shit, Donald Trump was hanging out with Kim Jong Un, wasn't he? Wasn't he like, actually sending fucking love letters to that guy and all that, and like, so if anything, it's like if you want to say if they have influence on any given political party, it would be fucking Republicans. North Korea. The fuck is he talking? Is there some kind of conspiracy theory out there that I don't know about how North Korea has taken over the Democrats? Is that like another fucking dumbass conspiracy theory that's out there now? Right? Like, if anybody knows, please tell me in the comments after this hits YouTube or whatever. Please tell me what the fuck Tucker Carlson is just talking about right there, because that's fucking stupid as hell. Let's continue.
Often speaks about is gun control. No American has the right to own an effective firearm, a firearm that does what firearms are supposed to. They'll tell you this at length. Having a gun like that.
Yeah, there are zero liberals out there who will tell you that. Right? Okay, wait, I will rephrase. I will not say there are zero, right? Liberals and progressives, right? I will say very few. Very, very few. Because I'm pretty sure you'll be able to find people who believe in 100% disarmament for everybody, right? Pretty sure that's a thing that exists. Very, very few people on the left actually believe that, right? That's a very small number, if any at all. And I can tell you that there are zero politicians on the left, zero Democratic politicians who are currently in Congress or most likely in any state house or any state Congress or any city council anywhere in this country. There are zero Democratic politicians who actually believe that no one has a right to own a gun. That's bullshit. That's bullshit. If you can find one, please tell me who they are. Right? Because that's complete 100% total bullshit. Of course, like all of the bullshit that Tucker Carlson spouts, no one watching his show will even question what he says. So now every single person watching this damn show is going to believe that now. Right? For the rest of time. That's how this is, you ever notice how like you hear conservatives and like, this is the one thing you do get from the conservative rank and file is that they believe shit forever, and you watch interviews with them like at like there's a guy that goes and interviews people at Trump rallies for CNN, right, for Ari Fleischer's show. And he'll ask them questions, and these people will be spouting conspiracy theories that have been debunked decades ago. There's people out there still talking about fucking Sandy Hook and crisis actors, for fuck's sake. Like, that shit happened 10 years ago. There's, absolute proof that it happened. There's dead people in the ground, and there's, people talking about crisis actors, which is like the dumbest shit ever. It literally takes, the tiniest amount of actual research to, not even real research. It doesn't even really take research to debunk this shit. To debunk the crisis actor thing, you don't, because when you say research, it brings visions to your head of somebody going out there and reading books and going through newspapers and digging up like birth certificates and social security cards and work employment histories and shit like that. You don't have to do any of that to disprove Sandy Hook. You just have to Google Sandy Hook and go to like the Wikipedia page on Sandy Hook. Right? And there's all the goddamn proof you need that the shit is bullshit, that it didn't, that there's no crisis actors, that it wasn't a conspiracy, that people actually died, and that the people involved are real and they're not government plants. And it wasn't a dumb shit like, a secret CIA fucking operation in order to like get people to willingly throw their guns away. It's like, get the fuck out of here. But you'll still see conservatives fucking saying that, thinking that shit's real. You know, like you still see conservatives talking about, riots that happened more than 2 years ago at this point. Black Lives Matter riots and stuff that are like years in the past at this point. People still talking about those things like they're happening yesterday, right? You still see conservatives talking about shit like Benghazi and that kind of thing. Are still, I mean, it's because you know it's like because all it takes is fucking Tucker Carlson to say it, or Sean Hannity to say it, or Laura Ingraham to say it, or Tim Pool to say it. All it takes is just one dumbass conservative talking head to fucking lie. And now there will be people out there who will believe that lie until the end of time. Right? I mean, that's all that's what happens when you have a national, you know, a national presence like Tucker Carlson. When you have you know, when you have the ability to reach millions of people on a daily basis, right? A platform. That's the word for it. When you have a national platform that has viewership in the millions, right? People trust what you say, you know, because we think in our heads, hey, this guy wouldn't be on TV if he wasn't saying the truth. They wouldn't allow him on TV if he wasn't saying the truth. That's the sort of thing that's going through the boomers' heads when they watch this fucking moron. You know, because all of your grandparents, your parents and your grandparents, people over the age of 60, they grew up in an era when that's what it was like. When they could turn on TV and they'd see fucking Walter Cronkite or some shit, and they could trust what he said was true. You know, right? Because media back then had reputations to uphold, right? And they would do their best to report the facts in an unbiased manner. Wasn't always Didn't always work out that way, but they would do their best, right? And so you would get people like Walter Cronkite, for example. That's a perfect example. You could trust when he said something because you knew that they vetted it, that it was vetted in and sourced and generally would be true, right? It's not like that anymore, folks, right? You can't trust what the news says anymore, especially when it comes from someone like Tucker Carlson, who's not a journalist. The guy's not a journalist, right? He's a fucking propagandist, is what it is. And they don't even try to hide it. But people will believe that shit now for the end of time. What he just said right there. Right? People will believe what he just said, no matter how little truth is actually entailed, it entails. They will believe it until the day they die, just because Tucker Carlson said it. That's what's wrong with our fucking country. Moving on.
That is just too much autonomy for you. If it continues, you may start to believe that you're a free citizen. And we can't allow that, and we won't. Joe Biden, for instance, makes this point regularly. Watch.
We're living in a country awash in weapons of war. I got it done once. I'm going to do it again. Eliminate assault weapons. It's time to ban these.
Good.
It's time to ban these weapons. The right to bear arms is not an absolute right that dominates all others. You don't need.
Joe Biden is correct here, in my opinion. But let's continue.
An AR-15. I'm serious. Think about it. Ban assault weapons and high-capacity magazines.
Yes. Good.
You don't need an RA-15 or whatever they call it.
You don't. You don't need one. That doesn't mean you shouldn't be allowed to have one. Right? But, yeah, I mean, I don't see what's wrong with that. Right? I wouldn't say ban them. I would say make it hard to get them. Right? That's my stance, is that it should be difficult to obtain these weapons. Right? And I don't believe everybody should own them. But I don't think you should ban them. Right? But look at what, from Biden's perspective, all of these mass shooters are using the same kind of weapon. So what's an easy way to reduce the reduce casualties when it comes to these mass shooters. Take away the type of weapon they seem to prefer, right? And it's not like there isn't been precedence for it, there was an assault weapons ban. Used to be. Things like AR-15s were illegal. And as soon as that ban lapsed, I think it was 2005, is when that assault weapons ban lapsed, right? We saw a spike in mass shootings. We saw a spike in shootings of people owning these types of spike in shootings from these types of weapons. So there you go. There's your proof. If you want a proof that gun bans work to stop mass shootings, there's your proof right there, right? We have an example of it actually happening. We have examples of it in other countries where these types of bans occur, and then there's a corresponding reduced number of shootings being reduced, right? So yeah, from Biden's perspective, this shit is effective. So it's not like he's incorrect. You may disagree with that. You may disagree with his conclusion, right? But you can't disagree with the fact. The facts are, you take people's guns away, when there's less guns, right? When you take them away from people and people have less guns, there are less fatalities from shooting. That's the fact. So you may disagree that that's the best way to go about it. But you can't disagree with facts. Sorry, folks. Or rather, you can disagree with facts. It just doesn't mean it just makes you incorrect. So, continuing.
So that's the head of the Democratic Party speaking very clearly that the party's position on guns. If we don't control them, you can't have them. Every Democrat thinks this is part of.
No, every Democrat doesn't think that. And that is not even what Joe Biden said right there. That is a mischaracterization. He didn't say guns. He said AR-15s. That's Tucker Carlson strawmanning the actual position there, removing all of the nuance possible and presenting it in the worst possible light. What do you expect from someone who lies for a living? Continuing.
Part of the catechism. So you can imagine our surprise. The other day, we're driving through Cambridge in the old hybrid Subaru, adjusting our surgical mask to cover both nose and mouth, and listening, needless to say, to National Public Radio.
See, I just like every 5 seconds he's got to throw in another anti-COVID thing. It's like, why? What is up with that, right? Like, the right wing, when it comes to COVID, they fucking won. Oh, goddamn. I fucking hate Fox News so much. Did you see that? I didn't click on shit. It just automatically... If I turn on the ad blocker, it won't let me watch it at all. But... now we gotta watch this dumbass fucking ad again. Such bullshit. But yeah, like... they won. When it comes to COVID, like... all of the restrictions are going away. Right? The government is no longer going to subsidize vaccines. That's going away. So if you didn't get vaccinated already... when the next one, if you actually decide to do the right thing and get vaccinated, it's going to cost you a shitload of money, right? All right, where were we? We were, goddamn this fucking asshole. Where the hell were we? We were like over here, like 2 seconds in. He just got finished showing Biden, right? So it was like right around here. So they stopped doing that, right? No place out there requires you to wear masks anymore. So there you go. Right? People aren't even taking the most basic of precautions anymore. Not even wearing masks. Right? I still wear a mask, but nobody fucking else does. There even places are like requiring people to go back into the office and stuff like that. It's like what? It's like we gave up. And the thing is, hundreds of people a day are still dying of the pandemic. Yesterday, it was more than 300 people died. And some of the states aren't even keeping track anymore. And the New York Times is currently, they have this COVID tracker that they used in order to track the amount. They're going to stop doing it because it's become endemic, but nobody cares anymore. Right. And yeah, if you get vaccinated, you're more likely to survive, but that doesn't mean that you will survive. There's still a chance that you could you could eat it if you, even when you are vaccinated and boosted and all that, you could still die of it. It's not like it is, you know. And the reason why is because the fucking virus evolved because conservatives are too fucking stupid to get vaccinated. If we all would have gotten vaccinated in the beginning, this shit would be over with, right? It's never gonna end. We just gave up. So why is it every 5 seconds? They keep fucking just bringing that up. They keep poking it. Making fun of people who actually like care about living and surviving. Like why? Like it's like you won, you fucking assholes. You won and everything's shitty and people are dying every day. Yet they still have to like it's like they're gloating. It's the most backwards fucking shit ever. And I don't know. I still can't believe how politicized vaccines have been. And this fucking asshole, like so far that's the second COVID joke that he's put into his little rant here. Like is it really still that big of a thing? Are there really conservatives really still fucking so like butthurt over COVID restrictions that like every day they're still just stroking each other over it? Like I guess so. Let's continue. Play, you piece of shit.
So you can imagine our surprise. The other day, we're driving through Cambridge in the old menopausal liberalism. And as we're listening, we hear this. We're going to play it for you and see if you can understand our total shock.
Mass shootings targeting LGBTQ spaces and a rise in anti-trans rhetoric have inspired some queer people to take up arms. New Hampshire's public radio Todd Bookman joined a monthly gathering of a gun group that sees firearms as key to their own self-defense. And as you might imagine, this story does include the sound of gunfire.
On a recent Sunday morning, the parking lot of Pawtuckaway State Park in southeastern New Hampshire is filling up with hikers. There's also a different crew, packing up warm clothes and weapons.
Good. This is awesome. This is awesome. I'm glad to hear that there are LGBTQ groups actually. Oh my God. Fuck you. It did it again. Such a pain in the ass. I'm glad to hear that there are LGBTQ groups that are taking, the Second Amendment seriously. Defending themselves, defending their families. So, let's continue.
Reload.
Is filling up with hikers.
There we go.
There's also a different crew, packing up warm clothes and weapons.
Thank you all for coming to Rainbow Reload.
Your anti-trans rhetoric makes the trans community carry guns. Rainbow Reload! They're packing heat. They'll be appendix carrying in more ways than one. Watch out. Wait a second, we thought. This is NPR, National Public Radio, suddenly telling you that actually guns are good. They're valuable tools of self-defense, really against you.
So, you notice that it didn't actually say that in this segment that he played. It didn't actually say that it was a positive or a negative thing or anything. It was just reporting on the story. Right, so that's the first thing. I want to kind of point that out because that's a rhetorical sort of trick. Like, just because they did a liberal, I guess you would call it progressive, although NPR isn't really. NPR is a little milquetoast, but, if you want the real progressive liberal media, look at something like Democracy Now!, KPFK, stuff like that. Those are the places where you're gonna get the Pacifica Network. That's where you're gonna get communists and like anarchists and shit on the air, right? NPR is still sort of publicly it's public radio, but they also take a lot of money from corporations, so they're a little weak when it comes to their activism, but yeah, like. You notice they didn't actually say like he's implying just because they did a story on trans people carrying weapons that means they're endorsing it. It's like no. That doesn't. They didn't endorse anything. At least he didn't show any evidence that they endorsed anything, right? He's just assuming they are. So that's the first thing. That's a way that you can sort of mischaracterize your political opposition, right, is by assuming just because they, you know, pay attention to a certain issue that every single person of that persuasion believes the exact same thing about that issue. It's like, no, that's not what this was at all. This was NPR reporting on a story of trans people and they did carrying weapons. They didn't say it was good. They didn't say it was bad. They didn't endorse it. They didn't say anything about that at all. Reporting on a news story is not an editorial. I mean, I know Fox News is like, and when it comes to Fox News, there is no difference between their news stories and their editorials, right? But it's not like that for every other like media source out there. So that's the first rhetorical trick there. Secondly, when he said, what was that last thing against you? Let's watch that last
So
part
there
again.
are times
Right
when
here.
guns are. This is NPR, National Public Radio, suddenly telling you that actually guns are good. They're valuable tools of self-defense, really against you.
Where did that part come in? Where did you get the against you part? They're valid tools of self-defense, really against you. Why? And I guess when he says you, he means the people at home, right? Why? Where did anybody get anything from that 10-second snippet of why they would want to, why any trans person with a gun would want to shoot a Tucker Carlson viewer, right? How did you get that from that? I didn't get that at all, right? I mean, now he just talked about how, liberals were hiding and huddling together afraid and shit. But that was specifically designed to invoke fear in his audience. Really against you. They're an effective tool of defense really against you. I.e., the trans people have guns and they're going to shoot you. You should be afraid of them. That's the message that he just did right there when less than 5 minutes ago, I mean, we're only, 3 minutes in? So less than 5 minutes before, he just got finished saying that every single trans person, every single leftist, is what he said, is like a sheeple who sits there huddling afraid over everything. Right? What did he say? He said huddling afraid that everyone who's a leftist is there like, that's why we show up with 80,000 people because there's safety in numbers because we're all afraid and the right wing are rugged individuals. And then he turns right around 3 minutes later and is like, they're going to shoot you. It's defense against you. Biggest fucking hypocrite ever.
So there are times when guns are good, says NPR. And we thought, well, wait a second. We've been listening to NPR since, Click and Clack, the Tappet brothers. And we remember very clearly their position on guns. For example, quote, the U.S. has more guns than any other country in the world. This is the same NPR that, in between updates on the latest trans dynasty.
Yeah, that is called a fact. So, okay, here's another rhetorical trick, right? He just used another rhetorical propaganda trick, right? He said, we've been listening to them since Click and Clack, which I assume that's an older show, and that we know their stance on guns. But he didn't say what their stance on guns is. He didn't say that. He didn't say if their stance is good or bad or pro or negative or whatever, pro or con. He just said, we've been watching them forever. We know what their stance is. And then he put that on the screen. The U.S. has more guns than any other country in the world. How would that be, and of course the connotation there is that, NPR has a anti-Second Amendment stance, an anti-gun stance, because they're liberals. That's what the message he's trying to convey, but what he's saying doesn't actually support that message. Just listing that what this sentence here, the U.S. has more guns than any other country in the world, right? That's not a judgment on guns. That's a fact. The fact is the U.S. does have more guns than any other country in the world. Like, there are more guns here than there are in Iraq, for fuck's sake. During the height of the Iraq War, there were still more firearms in the United States during the worst fighting. There's more firearms in the United States than in Syria, right? Than in Afghanistan. And these are countries where you can go to a bazaar, like a fucking, farmers market type bazaar thing. Like that's what we call them here. We call them farmers markets. There they call them bazaars. You can go there and buy hand grenades in a basket. Like, that's how common weapons are in these places in the Middle East, in Syria, in Afghanistan, in Libya, for example, right? There's zero gun control in these countries. You could just show up, you can buy AK-47s at a fucking in a marketplace, for fuck's sake, with no restrictions whatsoever. Anybody can get lethal weapons at the drop of a hat in these countries, and there are still more firearms in the United States than there are in any of those places. Right? That's how it is. I mean, so why does this just, how the fuck does stating facts connotate any sort of stance on an issue? What's he trying to say? What? Just the fact that you fucking report on guns, you report the truth about guns, means you must be anti-guns. You must be against the Second Amendment, or else you wouldn't be reporting the fucking truth about it. See how the shit falls apart when, all you have to do is just examine the actual language that these idiotic talking heads use. Just examine what they actually say. Just listen to what they actually say. And their shit falls apart, and it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense because they're lying to you, right? If it was the truth, it would make sense, right? He would actually have a point. His point would stand on its own merits. It doesn't stand on its own merits, right? It doesn't make sense because he's lying. Moving on.
Dinosaur emojis, we've been following those very carefully, routinely run segments calling for more gun control, and not subtle ones, like the segment entitled, "Many gun owners support gun control, so why don't they speak out?" Oh yeah, a lot of gun owners support gun control.
That is also a fact, by the way, right? That's a fact that even by the NRA itself, and their own sort of questionnaires, their own polling, the vast majority, they have to admit the vast majority of people want gun control of some sort, right? Doesn't mean that they want all the same things, but the vast majority of people who own guns want some form of gun control. Why? Because they understand that these are not toys, that they're lethal weapons, right? They know what these things are capable of doing, right? And they know that it is in our best interest as a society to keep them out of the hands of people who are not responsible with them, i.e. murderers and rapists and insane people and maniacs of all types. Maniacs and crazy people should not have guns, right? The same way that you wouldn't want a maniac or a crazy person, right, to have access to cyanide, right, or something, or polonium nitrate or some shit like that, some highly poisonous shit, so that's why those things are controlled. The same way that you wouldn't want someone who has no business driving getting a driver's license, right? Someone who doesn't pay attention to the fucking rules of the road, someone who speeds like crazy, etc., like that. Someone who doesn't give a fuck enough to actually learn what stop signs are and how to signal, the same way you wouldn't want that guy to have a driver's license, right? It's no. They understand it's dangerous to allow dangerous people to have dangerous weapons, right? So why is reporting the truth This is the truth. Why is reporting the truth mean that the entire organization is, taking a political stance on something? Does he have a quote saying that we NPR, the organization, are against the Second Amendment and want to outlaw all guns? Does he have that? Is he putting that on the fucking screen here? No, he isn't. Because he's lying to you, folks.
Of course they do. And yet, here's that same National Public Radio, state media, controlled by the Biden administration, encouraging people to go to the gun store immediately. But not all people. Just trans.
NPR is not controlled by the Biden administration, right? NPR is also not controlled by the state. NPR is not state media. That is a lie that he just said. They get a grant from the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, which gets money from the government. But the other, that's where the majority of their money comes from. But NPR in particular gets the rest of its money from corporate donations. And that's why there are commercials on NPR, which is supposed to be commercial-free radio. There are actually commercials on NPR. That's why in front of many of the shows on NPR, they'll say, this show, there's one called What's Happening or That's Happening or something like that. And, they'll say, like, this show was brought to you by the National blah, 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 Corporation for Public Broadcasting and Exxon. Like, they'll say that because they have corporate sponsorships because they take money from corporations, right? There is also, if you want radio in particular that doesn't do that, the Pacifica Network does not take money from corporations. The Pacifica Network, which includes things like WBAI, KPFK in Los Angeles, that's the Pacifica Network, right? And I think there's a network, there's a affiliated station in Texas and a few others. I don't know all the call letters for every station, right? But just look up Pacifica Network on the internet, right? They don't take corporate money. That's truly listener-funded radio. They do drives every 3 months or something, where people they do donation type drives, right? So if that's what you're looking for, if that's what you're interested in, if you're interested in completely commercial-free, non-corporate funded media, that's where you got to go, right? It's not NPR. NPR doesn't do that. And that's why you get much more hard-hitting actual news. You get things like Democracy Now! And stuff like that are not beholden to corporate sponsors out of Pacifica. Right. Democracy Now! Also has a YouTube channel. And really good political muckraking reporting from them. And they're also not afraid to show they have a leftist bias, and they're not afraid to show it. Right? So, if you're looking for the actual the real liberal media, not what the conservatives say is the liberal media. If you want the real liberal media, that's what it is. It's Democracy Now!, it's KPFK, it's sources like that. It's not NPR, folks. And once again, like he just said, NPR is not controlled by Joe Biden. That's a lie. 100% lie. So, continuing.
Trans people. Guns are bad, except in the hands of trans people. Wow. Here's more.
Groups like Rainbow Reload exist around the country, often called Pink Pistol Clubs. It's a place for experts and the gun curious to practice and improve their shooting. But this goes beyond hobby. There's a practical goal here, to prepare and protect themselves.
If the world is dangerous, then you have to be dangerous back. And that very much has pushed me into where I am now.
Ooh, the gun curious. Well, when NPR describes something as the fill-in-the-blank curious, then it's a good thing. Ooh, the pedophile curious. Now the gun curious.
Just want to throw that out. Did he just say pedophile curious? Let's rewind that.
The world is dangerous. NPR describes something as the fill-in-the-blank curious, then it's a good thing. Ooh, the pedophile curious. Now the gun curious.
Jesus Christ. So he did. He just said pedophile curious. Where exactly in this entire thing did anybody say anything about that at all? Where the fuck did he get pedophile curious from? In a segment where we're talking about firearms, right? Nowhere. He pulled that out of his asshole, right? It's a smear. It's a smear against trans people, trying to pretend that, you know, one of the big right-wing smears is that all trans people are perverts and that they're all pedophiles and that they're all etc. Trying to groom children, right? Still getting on that idiotic bullshit trans grooming narrative, which has zero fucking basis in reality. In real life, it always turns out that if you're afraid of your kid being molested, then your kid is more likely to be molested by a preacher, like a preacher, or like a camp counselor at a Christian school, or something like that, than a priest, right? Far more likely to be molested by one of those people than by a drag queen or a trans person. Okay, it's complete 100% bullshit of the highest fucking order. And he just threw that in there as a not so subtle dog whistle. I mean, that wasn't even a dog whistle. That was like a bullhorn fucking, that was like a pig call right there. Just set it out all in the open so that his fucking idiotic followers at home watching that'll chuckle. Pedophile curious. Stupidest shit ever. Where does it say anywhere in any of the stuff that we're watching, though? Because the other thing that he said that I want to comment on is that he said, yeah, according to NPR, guns are okay for trans people, but bad for everybody else. Trans people should own guns, but nobody else should. That's what he just said, right? Where does it say that anywhere? Anywhere in what we're watching. Anything that he quoted, right? Any of the segments that he played from NPR, where did they say that at all? Where did they say anything even remotely close to that? They didn't say shit about that. They didn't say anything. They said nothing that could logically draw you to that conclusion, right? It doesn't make any sense. It's because it's lies. If he was telling the truth, if he was giving an honest assessment of this NPR story, it would make sense. What he was saying would make sense. What he's saying would be plausible. It wouldn't sound like bullshit. If, this is how you can tell when people are lying to you. Right? If their argument doesn't hold up if you actually take a second and examine their actual words, it would make sense if they weren't lying. Or if they were at least if they were even trying to be honest and give an honest assessment. It would make sense. What he's saying would make sense. What he's saying does not make sense because he's not trying to do that. Right? He's trying to make people afraid so that they'll hate trans people, so that they'll think trans people are coming and getting guns to go kill them. Defense against you. You can't. How much more blatant can you fucking be?
The world is dangerous. You have to be dangerous back. Now, is that a quote from an FBI indictment of the Proud Boys? No, it's from an NPR segment. At this point, it's hard to tell the difference. And the lip-smacking NPR reporters just say it without any sense of self-awareness at all. What is going on here? Well,
Self-awareness, what they're saying is true. The world is dangerous. It is. It's dangerous for everyone. But it is in particular dangerous for trans people, in particular dangerous for gay people, in particular dangerous for all members of the LGBTQ community. Why? Because maniacs like to target them, right? You never see, for example, a gay person show up at a cowboy bar and murder 50 people. When was the last time that happened? Right? But you see that the other way around. You see plenty of insane anti-gay, anti-LGBTQ people, maniacs showing up at gay bars and blowing people away. At, like, say, for example, the Club Q shooting. For example, where's the one in Florida where 50 people were killed? What was that? Nightclub shooting, 50 people. Was that the Club Q shooting? Orlando nightclub shooting in Florida. Right. 29-year-old fucking right-wing lunatic shows up, kills 49 people, and wounds 53 more in a mass shooting at a nightclub called Pulse in Orlando, Florida. Right. I mean, it's not like those things don't happen, right? It makes sense. And this is just not even counting just the casual violence and bigotry that gay people and trans people encounter all the time, constantly on a daily fucking basis, right? I'm overweight by about 25 pounds or so. People hate fat people. That's just the truth. When you're a fat person, there is discrimination, right? But random fucking dickheads don't purposely seek me out and beat the shit out of me just because I'm fat. Okay? That's not a thing that happens. I have never been afraid just walking into a place and thinking, oh, those guys over there want to kick my ass because I'm fat. Never seen that happen, right? I am part Filipino, not exactly a white person, right? I have experienced racism in my lifetime. People calling me rice eye and shit like that. More so when I was a kid. Not so much after I became an adult. That definitely went away. I don't know if it's because people don't aren't a bigot to me. Maybe I'm white passing now. Maybe because I'm an adult, they don't fuck with you as much. I don't know. I got it a lot as a kid. But never in my life have I been afraid of people hunting me down and kicking the shit out of me because I wasn't 100% white. I'm like, I'm like half white. But I've never had that fear. I've never had that fear of people wanting to do me physical bodily harm because of any inherent characteristic of my physical being like that. It's just not something in my experience, right? I have had run-ins with the police before. Luckily, I've never actually been arrested for anything. But never in my life have I felt like a cop was treating me differently just because of my race, or something like that, Like, say, a black person most definitely, many black people in this country have had that experience, right? they would speak differently about their experiences with police. You know what I mean? That's the reality. The reality is, but we're talking specifically about gay people though, but the reality is there are people out there who are treated differently because of who they are, because of how they present, because of discrimination, right? About how they, discrimination and stereotypes about what people think they are all about, regardless of what they really are about, right? And one of those things is especially for gay and trans people, is that random fucking dickheads want to do them harm, not because of anything they've done, not because of who they are, not because of anything they may be guilty of, any perceived wrongs or crimes they may have done in the past, not because of anything like that at all, but just because of the fact they exist. That is definitely a thing, right? So Tucker Carlson makes light of that these people maybe might want to defend themselves. You would think that if you were a pro Second Amendment person, like many conservatives say they are, right, that you would want gay and trans people to embrace the Second Amendment. Wouldn't you? If that's what you really cared about, because a lot of conservatives are one-issue voters. That's another thing that we got to remember, right? A lot of people in general are one-issue voters, but especially when it comes to conservatives. There are really only 3 or so big issues when it comes to conservatism. Those issues being abortion, the Second Amendment, and taxes. Right. Those are the 3 big issues, and then everything else is sort of on the side. Those are the 3 big, and then maybe immigration might be number 4, right? Those are the 3 big issues that drive people to the polls. That's why they vote Republican. That's why they vote conservative, right? They want to protect the little baby fetuses. They want to protect their overexpensive murder toys, and they don't want to pay the government, right? And you would think if that was your one issue, you would be happy that people from the other side are supporting your one issue, right? That's also part of the reason why Tucker Carlson is given this broadcast here. He doesn't want his supporters making friends with the enemy. That's why. That's why he's got to drum up some fear, some good old-fashioned fear, so you don't forget who your enemy is. It's like, no, don't make friends with the transes. If they support your issue, they're still bad. This is why. Such bullshit, folks. Let's turn this motherfucker off. Plus the fact that it's almost midnight and tomorrow I have to work. So that's the other reason why we're turning this shit off. But anyway, wanted to get that out there. I wanted to play that in light of what's happened with the Nashville shooting. God, my hand hurts. Let's zoom out a little bit so we can see where we're at. Looking pretty good, don't you say? Wouldn't you say, folks? Let's get rid of the underdrawing. Coming along pretty well. I think we'll be working on this for a little while. It's good to zoom out and get a good perspective when you draw stuff like this, right? You have to zoom out and kind of look at it on the whole for a little bit. I'm looking at some of it thinking that the chest area in particular might be a little too busy. Might want to clean some of that up. But anyway, wanted to get that out there, because I can guarantee you over the next at least week or so, this is going to be a hot button issue. It's going to be a hot button issue about why the LGBTQ people should not be allowed to have firearms. And I guarantee you there's going to be legislation introduced. Maybe might not pass, but there will be legislation introduced in red states in order to put some kind of controls to keep gay and trans people from buying guns. There will be. It's 100%. There will be someone introducing a bill somewhere, most likely in Florida. Most likely in Florida, in order to keep, in particular, trans people from arming themselves. Right? Because these fucking assholes never miss an opportunity to spread hate. That's why. Anyway, folks, I am going to go ahead and call it a night, but before I do, if you're watching on Twitch, please follow me. If you're watching on YouTube, please like and subscribe. I appreciate it. I have some social media stuff that I need to show you all now, because I notice that when I don't do it, nobody actually goes and follows any of my social media. So this is why I'm going to show it now. Let me just go to my shop here, and then I also have a... Alright, so first I have a webcomic. It's called, let me turn on my laptop window, make this bigger. I have a webcomic. It's called hawanja.com. It's got ninjas. It has talking ducks. It has kung fu and a bunch of other crazy stuff. Please check it out. If you like what I do and you want to send me some money my way, then I have an Etsy shop. Here is my Etsy shop down at the bottom. I sell stuff. I sell prints. For example, this is a print, Lovecraft print. Please consider buying something. If you like what I do and you want to give me some money, please consider buying something from my Etsy shop. I have a DeviantArt website where all of my artwork that I do on the channel ends up eventually. Here's one that we just did over the last couple of 4 or 5 streams. So please check me out on my DeviantArt site. I'll put that down in the bottom. I also have another YouTube site that I don't do very much with called Ucity Videos, but I'm not going to put a link to that there. If you're interested, it has game reviews and toy reviews and shit like that. Anyway, folks, I'll put all of these down in the link tree, which you will see in the description of the video on YouTube, and then also on Twitch as well. Join my Patreon. Anyone who joins I'm going to make all of the streams available in their entirety. You'll be able to see all of those on Patreon after they expire on Twitch. Thank you all so much. And we will be back on this Saturday at 11:30 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. So, hope to see you all then. Adios, folks. Hello folks, if you like what I do and you want to support the channel, please consider buying something from my Etsy shop, supporting me on Patreon, liking and subscribing, and checking me out across my social media links listed below. Thank you all so much, and see you next time.